All right, so we can we have our demand curve here again. I'm just going to draw it more generally, and so we know this curve shows us along the curve shows us for different the different quantity demanded for different prices. So we know our price goes down, we're going to buy more. We're going to move down here somewhere, and if our price goes up, then people are going to buy less, and that would be shown by like up here somewhere, because they're buying, as you can see, going down. You can see less, and so that's prices. So this just shows the relationship with price. So anything with its own price changing, that's on this curve, right? That's on this curve. So the question we can say was, well, what if something else changes? So what if something other than price changes? Okay, so something else. Well, what's going to happen? Well, when we drew this line, this curve, we assume nothing else is changing. So anything else changes, it's going to be not going along the curve. Instead, it's going to be a shift. Okay, so that's going to lead to some kind of a shift. So a shift will be, that's going to cause, for example, go from D1 to D2, just as an example. So this is a shift. So this is going to be a shift. That would be of the demand curve. And a shift in demand curve is caused by something else besides the price changing. In this case, this is an increase going from D1 to D2. So it means the same price, like say this price, then now they want to buy more. So even though the price didn't change, people want to buy more. Remember, we got Q down here. So in this case, they're buying more, right? The price isn't the same. There's the price right here. Price is the same, but they decided they want to buy more. Okay, so we went from this quantity and we decided to buy more up here. This is the idea. So this is called a shift, and in this case, this is called an increase in demand. So let's think about some things that would cause these shifts to happen. You can think for a second. You might even want to pause and say, don't think about what causes shift to happen. Think about what would cause demand to change. What would cause the demand for some product to increase or decrease besides the price? Okay, and you can kind of make a list of things to yourself. So let's just kind of start in order here. So the first thing I can think of is, so factors that shift demand would be income. Okay, so if our income changes, that will definitely affect demand. So if overall people have more income, then that would, what do you think is going to happen? So normally they're going to buy more stuff. Okay, so for the normal goods, this would be true. That we get more income. I'm going to use Y for income. In economics, we often use Y for income. Then we're going to have more demand, and if we have less income, we're going to have less demand. Okay, so for example, just to draw the first case, we can draw this like this. Well, at our demand, and then our income goes up. So get income goes up, and now they want to buy more stuff. Okay, so now they want to buy more stuff. And that's normal for most things. That's kind of what you would expect. There is kind of an unusual, well, a special case that we can see. I'm going to put a little warning sign that this is special. So this is a special case. Lots of students become obsessed with special cases, and they spend all their time thinking about them, and they don't remember the normal case. But this is a special case, so this happens sometimes. So sometimes we will have something called inferior good. Okay, and inferior goods don't behave like normal goods. That's why they're a special case. So what happens to inferior goods? Your income goes up, and you buy less of them. Your demand goes down, right? The whole curve, and your income goes down, and you want to buy more of them. Okay, well, that's pretty weird. So let's try to think of some examples. So for normal goods, easy to think of examples. You buy more cars, more clothes, you go out to eat more often, you go on vacation more often. So that's pretty easy. But inferior goods is kind of weird. So the way to think of them is just think, well, something I would buy less of in the future if I had more money. If you graduate from college and you make a bunch of money, and what would you buy less of? Or if suddenly your income was to really drop, something you might buy more of. And so some classic examples that are it kind of varies a little bit from place to place, but some things that might be thought of in many places: public transportation. So when people's income goes down, they're more likely to ride the bus, and when if their income was to go up, they might be more likely to take an Uber or buy a car or something like that. A kind of a classic one is instant noodles. Now, if you're a big instant noodle fan, don't get offended. But yeah, instant noodles. College students who kind of famously, for example, eat instant noodles, partly because they're really cheap and they kind of fill you up and they taste good, not particularly good for you. Maybe cheap hot dogs or other kind of cheap meats. Okay, so again, if you really like Spam or something like that, actually, I'm not sure if Spam is cheap, but if you really like hot dogs, don't get offended. But yeah, on average, you would tend to be, when people's incomes fall, they'll buy more hot dogs, and if their incomes rise, they'll buy less hot dogs, and they might switch to more high-end kind of meats, like eating steak or something like that. Yeah, so that's the income case. The next one, so we're going to go through a couple of them, and then we'll probably pause for a little bit. The next one is the price of related goods. It's the price of related goods. Well, how can a good be related? Well, the goods have two main kinds of relationships. The first kind of relationship is called complements. Okay, so complements. So complements are when we use goods and services that are used together. They're kind of like a set. They don't always have to be perfectly used together where you can't use them separately, but they're often used together. So these are goods and services that are used together. So some examples of this might be, and they're not necessarily sold by the same company. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. So maybe a toothbrush and a toothpaste. Okay, so for example, maybe ground meat and buns. Okay, hamburger buns, for example. So it's not necessarily the same company making the ground meat and also making the hamburger buns, but often if people are buying more of one, they'll buy more of the other. One I'll do in a second, a classic one, maybe a burger and fries. That's like a classic example, and maybe a cell phone and cell service. Okay, I'll use that in just a second. So let's go to this and let's do our example. Let's do the burger and fries first. So let's see. Well, let's suppose we're talking about the market for fries. So this is the market for fries. So let's suppose there is a market for fries, and then got our demand curve for fries. So right now people want to buy a certain amount, and the question is, well, what's going to happen if the price of burgers go up? So burgers become more expensive. So all the burger restaurants raise the price of their burgers. What's going to happen to demand for fries? Now, if they are complements, if they truly are, if people like to eat them together and they don't really like to eat them each separately, then we would expect that this would cause a decrease in demand. So we would expect this will become, we'll see a decrease in the demand for fries. So people say, well, I don't really want to eat the burgers are more expensive, and now it's kind of like the set is more expensive. And so they might decide to go eat something else rather than paying for these fries because the burger is more expensive. So the whole set went up. We could just have one more example here. We can to have one more example here. We can look for the market for cell service. Okay, so we're looking at the market for cell service, and so we're saying, okay, we're here. This is our demand for cell service. We got our P and our Q, and then what happens if the price of cell phones was to fall? So cell phones become really cheap. You can buy an iPhone for $50. Okay, so then if we get a price of the phones, mobile phones, smartphones, whatever you want to call them, go down, then we would expect this to increase our demand for service, right? So now everybody's going to have a phone. People are going to buy phones for their 4-year-olds. I guess people already do buy phones for their 4-year-olds. But anyways, you get the idea. So we'd expect, because this set they used together got cheaper, so people are going to demand more. Okay, this video is getting a little long, but I'm going to go ahead and continue with it. So the other type of related good is substitutes. Okay, and so substitutes, as you can probably imagine, they're goods and services that can be used for the same purpose, right? So people kind of consider them to be in the same category, and they're used for the same purpose. So you can use one or you can use the other. so they can be used for the same purpose. So an example of this would be a classic example, maybe Coke and Pepsi. Now, some of you are probably saying Coke and Pepsi are nothing alike, and I kind of agree with you. But for a lot of people, they're pretty similar. Maybe apple and orange. Okay, so you want some fruit, you want some vitamins. You can eat apple, you can eat orange. I know they have different vitamins, but it's kind of the general idea. Maybe coffee and tea. They both have a little bit of caffeine. They're both warm on a cold day. So substitutes don't have to be, they can be close substitutes where they're really close, where people consider them almost exactly the same, or they can be a little bit far away. Okay, but they're still substitutes if people kind of trade them off against each other. So let's just quickly look through these examples before we move on. So if we're looking at the market, say for Pepsi here, then if we would expect everything, again, remember these are all everything else equal, if unilaterally Coke was to raise their price, so the Cokes just said, oh, let's raise our price, then what would we expect to happen? Well, people are going to say, go to the store, Coke's expensive today, Pepsi's not, or you can say Coke products and Pepsi products, then they're going to say, okay, let's switch to the Pepsi products because they are not as expensive anymore, at least relatively so, they're not as expensive, right? So this should give us an increase in our demand for Pepsi. And the two companies, competitors know this. They know that when they change their price, it's going to have an effect on their substitute goods. Okay, and then so on the other side, we can look over here. Let's say this is the market for tea. Let's suppose you can kind of guess where I'm going to go with this. Let's suppose the coffee prices went up a lot. Coffee prices went down a lot. So coffee gets super cheap. So you go into your local coffee shop, and coffee is much cheaper than before. So your tea drinks stay the same, and the coffee drinks all drop 20%, for example. Well, what's going to happen? Well, should be pretty obvious, I think, to most of us, is people are going to want to drink less tea. They're going to say, oh, well, I like coffee and I like tea, but man, the tea is really expensive now. And the tea didn't actually change price, but what we're saying is, well, at the same price, they're going to want to buy less. Okay. I'll go ahead and save the rest for the next video about the rest of the factors that can change.